Hey everybody, welcome back for week 2, episode 2 of the Serve podcast with me, Andy Roddick. We are going to start this show with the most important part of it. A huge thank you to you all that downloaded, liked, subscribed on all the different platforms that we're going to show right here, right now. Hopefully it pops up. Otherwise, I'm just making random hand motions. But the success in the first week was humbling. It was more than we anticipated. With doing a tennis podcast. We were in the top 10 for all sports podcasts in America. Apparently, producer Mike, we're big in Brazil.
Huge.
We were huge in Brazil. Tutto bene. That's fantastic. Obrigado, Brazil. I think we were 2 for a second in sports podcast, which I don't know how that happens. I think I played there when I was 15. But we're so touched and we're so thankful. Another thing that's a big deal is we're thankful for your feedback, right? We put up polls and what did you want us to talk about? What was your take on this? Did you want to learn more about this subject? And so you dictated large parts of what this show will be. So if you don't like this episode, look in the mirror. It's on you. You made a bad decision because we're covering what you told us to. In all seriousness, just a fantastic response. Be sure to check us out on all of our socials. Social Sophie, who runs all of our digital content and our social, has done an amazing job. Has done some cool bits, mixing in my dumb takes with Steve Carell. She did a thing for Jon Wertheim where the bar cheered when he came on, more than when I existed. She's doing some really fun stuff that I am certainly not tech capable enough to do and or funny enough to do. So she's doing an awesome job. So be sure to follow us on all of the socials. We're trying to kind of get them into the where they all have the same name, a little disjointed, but we can find us. Please like us, follow us, do all of that good stuff. We are going to talk about some really lighthearted stuff today, like how Saudi Arabia is going to take over tennis and sports gambling, the marketing effects. Jon Wertheim, who is our guest again, still recruiting him to be the co-host, but basically how advanced marketing is dangerous, and especially when it comes to gambling. But my side was, is it bringing new fans to the game? Are there positives from it? How is it different from a lot of the everyday things that we do or choose to consume as adults? So hopefully you'll find that interesting. I certainly learned something every time that I talk to Jon Wertheim. I think it's time to also mention something that I think is completely underexposed. Big congratulations to Taylor Allison Swift, winning Pop Album of the Year at the Grammys and mind-melting half of America in the process. You know, we're going to cop off the perfect week where maybe her boyfriend goes and wins the Super Bowl. Maybe people lose it because she's wearing a jersey. I don't know. But congrats to her for kind of general world domination. We are going to talk some prop bets later. John doesn't know we're going to do it, so I'm going to try to take him by surprise. Which will be fun. And we're going to, obviously discuss her, on top of, being the largest touring sensation the world has ever seen and putting out hit records and launching another album in April. But like doing all that and having the time to be a covert government psyop. Like, I'm just curious about how the mechanics of that, like, is it bad that my first reaction is like, how do the logistics work? Like, how is there that much time? How do we write folklore and also, do that? Like, I don't, that's, I'm just saying, it seems like a lot. I'm worried about burnout, frankly. Like, I think that's a real concern, but apparently she handles it off. We're going to talk about me getting myself in trouble on Twitter. Basically someone asking if Andy Murray's current form affects his legacy, which I have a very strong opinion about, but I also want to give the benefit of the doubt to the journalists by talking to our own resident opinion maker in journalism, Jon Wertheim. So, without further ado, let's get into some Wertheim, and thank you again for listening to Served. All right, guys, our first sponsor. Full disclosure, I love this product so much. I am a user and I invested in it myself. Calling all tennis enthusiasts. Want to know the secret weapon of professional players? It's not just talent, but data and analysis. Now you can unlock that same advantage with Swing Vision, the AI app that revolutionizes your game. Imagine real-time stats, personalized insights, and highlight reels that showcase your progress. Plus, with smartwatch integration, you get superhuman line calls on your wrist. Stop guessing and start winning. Get your free swing stick and trial at swing.vision/r/served. Take your tennis game from good to great with Swing Vision. All right, and now we bring in our second ever guest, who was also our first ever guest from the Department of Redundancy Department. Our friend Jon Wertheim. You came back. You came back for another shot.
Back in civilization. Back here, you're like the Mira Andreeva of podcasters. You come out of the gate strong and see if you can sustain it now. But good effort from you.
Well, listen, if you could promise me that I would have her future, but in this vertical, I'd be pretty happy about it. So that's high praise and much appreciated. You're home now. You're back from Australia. Where in the world is, I won't say Carmen Sandiego. Where's Jon Wertheim?
Yeah, it's boring. I mean, I'm in Greenwich Village, back home. But boy, Australia, sidebar, great country. Everyone should go there. We should all be living there. But back home now, and we'll see where I am next week.
So I was doing if I backtrack like 15 or 20 years, or even the last 10 or 12 since I stopped playing, I didn't think my ESPN commentary debut would be for pickleball, but that's how I spent my night last night. Was my debut with Chris Fowler was talking about a bunch of legendary has-been tennis players playing a sport they didn't grow up playing. So that's what I did.
Good for you. We'll have to talk about pickleball at greater length sometime. But yeah, see, I like how Fowler goes from the national championship game. Probably what 35 million people watching. Now he's doing pickleball. But we'll save that for another podcast. But boy, pickleball ain't going anywhere, is it?
I don't think it's going anywhere, and I think there's something to relate it to later in the show. But it was fun. Frankly, like those events are amazing for me because you have people in a room, whether it's Andre and Steph, who are in kind of like full go mode again, right? Like they're just doing stuff, which is amazing. Like I've known Andre, and he's been my idol for a long time, but I have a hard time being in Steph's presence without being like incredibly starstruck. Which in the tennis world at this moment in my life, not to sound jaded, I don't get that way around many people in our orbit anymore, having kind of lived this life for a little while. And Steph is like a huge exception. I can't be around her without feeling like everything I say is just idiotic, which it might be. I'm just more conscious of it.
Steph and Tracy Chapman emerging on the same weekend. No, go back and look at what she did. My theory about her is that she suffers a great deal for not being in the public eye, and people don't really, if she were on broadcast or coaching or doing the speaking rounds, it would be one thing. She's made a conscientious choice, and I think it's really admirable in some way. I'm done with being a public figure. I want to be normal. I want to go to Home Depot, not be recognized. And I think that is really kind of impacted her legacy. Go back and look at what she achieved. She won all four majors, the quadruple career slam. She won all four majors a minimum of 4 times, and she was out by 30. I mean, it's a joke what she achieved, but I feel like because she is not front and center by her own choice, maybe we don't give her due. So no, great to see her and Andre both back. And if this kind of is a harbinger, if this is a prelude to more public appearances, that's great. And we welcome her.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to hang out and have a beer with them afterwards last night, and that's always fun. But it's pretty simple. They're like, we're empty nesters now. We can go do stuff. Okay. I can go to Australia for like they're on. You inspired them with your words last week, Wortheim.
They're singing my song. I'll tell you something. Our kids are born, like our sons were born like a few weeks apart, and our daughters were born a few weeks apart. Just total coincidence, I hasten to add. But yeah, it sounds like we're at the same stage of life, and this could be a recurring theme. But yeah, and empty nest is a game changer.
Yeah, listen, we're better for having them. It was great to see Maria James. Sock is nasty at pickleball. He beat the number 4 pickleball player in the world last week. Just and he also won a mixed doubles tour title last year as a hobby with Annalie Waters. But anyways, it was cool. We'll take a deeper dive into that at some point. So what I need, we're getting a lot of feedback. We put a poll out from some of our early listeners, and the question was a version of this, of the rumored Super Tour, which I want you to give maybe some context to on what we're actually dealing with. Are you for it? Are you against it? or do you want more information? Which I think is an incredible. I think it's a good option to give people. And 65% of respondents said that they wanted more information. So give us information.
Oh man, you want the TED Talk version or the Fit for podcast? Yeah, it's really
whatever you choose. It's all the same to me.
Yeah, and I mean, jump in anytime because to me it's fascinating. And this is really tennis intersecting with all sorts of social and economic issues. Saudi Arabia is driving this, right? I mean, Saudi Arabia, very wealthy country. Oil is not forever. They're trying to diversify their economy. Not a great reputation in sort of the global theater that they would like to improve. Well, here's one way to do it is through sports. And there is a huge investment in sports. This is not about stadiums and media rights deals the way it is in most places. This is about rebranding an entire country. And I think that's important. Success is not going to be measured based on what TV deals they land or how many fans sit in the stands. This is something much more macro about changing perception of Saudi Arabia and changing the way it trades with other countries and is perceived by other countries. So they've obviously sunk a lot of attention into sports. We have the Live Tour in golf, which was kind of a first foray. That hasn't gone so well. We're still trying to figure out what that means. It was greatly controversial. There were lawsuits. There's now this sort of merger. They want to avoid that, but the Saudis have made it very clear tennis is an area where they'd like to grow as well. There's a lot of money. And the question for tennis is, how do we do this? Do we risk a rival tour like the Live Golf Tour? Or do we try and make nice and figure out a way to come up with a win-win? And what seems to be on the table now, Craig Tiley is a driving force, is that Saudis put a lot of capital into the sport. The 9 biggest events get together. They combine with the 4 majors. They add a big event in Saudi Arabia, probably in January or February. Suddenly you have this super tour. I think you and I are just calling it that. I don't know if that's going to be the official I don't know if that's the official word for it, but it's kind of the super tour where the players and Craig Tiley took a lot of meetings in Australia and he sort of put the players one-on-one and said, listen, you're going to make double, triple, maybe 4 times as much money as you're making now. We need you to play these 14 events. You'd be playing them anyway. What this does for the tour, I mean, tennis is very good at coming up with these broad plans and then the devil's in the details and they never really get worked out. But the plan is essentially, and again, this is very much driven by Saudi Arabia and this money dangling. Combine the 9 biggest events, the 4 majors, add a Saudi Arabia event, and suddenly you have this 14 event tour. What that does for everything else on the calendar is a big question. Is this men and women is a question that's out there. Are players going to go for it? And there are ethical considerations as well. This is a country that has public beheadings, and this is a country that doesn't have a penal code, but they do criminalize homosexuality. This is a country where there are wife tracker apps. I mean, men and women are not treated equally. Some people say, listen, nobody's perfect. I tend to think that moral relative argument is pretty weak. Other people say absolutely no, and I think there are more nuanced takes. We love being binary. Life is complicated. Chrissy and Martina, I think, have been opposed, and I think they have a really good point, which is, thank you for your interest. We need to see some thresholds met. We're not comfortable going to your country right now. We're not comfortable bringing this flagship women's event to a country where women aren't treated equally. We're concerned that, 5 years ago, a journalist was killed with bone saws. We're concerned that this year alone, there have been public executions. You raise your standards to here, and then we'll re-engage. Other people are much more forgiving. We can talk about Nadal, who signed this sort of ambassadorship with the Saudi Federation, but it brings up a lot of issues. We talked last week about time is undefeated. Money's got a pretty good track record too. Yeah. So we see a lot of athletes in a lot of sports. This isn't just tennis. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo is playing there, and they're boxing and UFC and Formula One. I mean, tennis isn't the only sport, obviously. But I'm curious. A, your thoughts. B, have you thought about how you would respond if you were in this position and if you were given a chance to play there for a lot of money?
Yeah. So I've been on record saying I wouldn't have left for Live. The PGA Tour is pretty good. I think they have 45-minute flights for the next 4 weeks between tour events, all up and down the West Coast for a lot of money. But the biggest thing for me, I can say no to money because, I'm I am a capitalist in life. I like to go get things. I believe in free markets, but I also don't like doing things if they feel gross. And if they feel a little bit icky. I would not have gone, if I was a golfer, to live to basically play a set of exhibitions that don't even have a cut and that don't even play 4 rounds. And the biggest thing is, like, my life's work is built up to try to have that moment at a major, right? At Wimbledon. That's the difference here that kind of causes me pause. I think there's big differentials between kind of defecting to live, which is everyone's prerogative if they want to do it, and they're paying 52-year-olds that haven't been relevant in the game, $250 million. Who am I to tell that person that they can't do it as long as they can live and sleep well? That's your grown-ups. That's certainly your choice. I don't think I would have done it, but this is very different, because if all of a sudden the majors are involved in this whole thing, I don't think as a player I'm going to give up what I've worked towards since I was 6, because someone made a deal that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't know that I'm not going to walk out on center court at Wimbledon if it is kind of all bundled up together and you kind of have to opt in or opt out. And I don't know if that's the situation. I would have a hard time not doing that. Personally, I would have to play the majors. I would have to play the US Open. I did say no, and we talked about if I want to talk about it on air or not. I did say no. That there was an exhibition opportunity that was brought to me for this April, and I said no out of hand because I didn't want the follow-up of how much are they going to pay you. I just kind of didn't want to know, so I said no out of hand. One, because I fear being a hypocrite as much as most things in life, and I've certainly taken stands before. So from my case, I'm not playing in majors anymore. I don't have my eyes on the biggest prize. My life's work is done in the tennis sense. New beginnings. Cheers. Here we are. But what I worked for since I was 8, I got the opportunity and I took a shot at the basket. If those opportunities are off the table, then hypocrisy, I think, jumps in a little bit. But if the Super Tour is somehow structured where they can swallow up the 4 slams, they have all the leverage, right? The ATP, their biggest value adds are infrastructure, history, ranking system, and relationships with the players, right? And they make a profit at ATP Tour, the World Finals. That's where they make kind of their big lump to kind of make the other 40 some odd weeks profitable. If all of a sudden they get their marquee events taken, you can replicate a ranking system. No one owns math. And the Grand Slams are now kind of looped into this new investment. I don't think it's competing tours. I think it's over.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this is defense, right? A lot of this is we don't want these guys to swallow us up. And what happens when the Saudis, and we're talking, I mean, literally limitless amounts of money. I mean, it's silly money. I mean, they're paying Cristiano Ronaldo more than Steph Curry, LeBron, Pat Mahomes, and Aaron Judge make combined. So if they can get a few top players, buy them off, all of tennis is in a world of hurt. So I think some of this is a defensive move to sort of say, listen, let's all play nice in the sandbox. We'll give you a big event and try and foreclose a live type situation. I'll tell you one thing, just one thing that was really interesting to me. I went over there about a year ago. They happened to be, I didn't go for tennis, but they happened to be having this exhibition. I played high school matches in front of bigger crowds than that. I mean, this was not about 10,000 people going to watch, Kyrgios and Rublev. And I think Taylor Fritz ended up winning the $1 million. There were like, you could count the fans with 2 hands. But one of the first people I saw there was Judy Murray. And I'm like, wait a second. Andy Murray has gone on record as saying he won't play Saudi Arabia. He has problems with this. It's sports washing. And his mom is one of the first people I happened to see there. She was doing a clinic. Her attitude clearly is, look, we need to build bridges. We need exposure. We need to, break down barriers. Andy had a very different take. So even in the same household, 2 very reasonable people can reach a very different conclusion about this. But yeah, I mean, it's an open secret that women are, if they're not going to move their tour finals there, it's going to be one of the great upsets of the year because that everything sort of, but the ink is dry, we're told. This is something tennis is going to have to reckon with. And look, I mean, I'm open to the suggestion. Maybe it's great that tennis is going to this country and it's going to help accelerate this cultural change. I also think this could get really ugly in a hurry. There are gay players. How do they feel going to a country where homosexuality is criminalized? There are government provided wife apps where men can keep track of their spouses. I'm not sure that's consistent with the WTA's values. So it's complicated. It's a big story. It brings in sort of the best and worst of tennis. And like everything in the sport, it's all about the details. And we'll see whether it's exactly what you said. Look, can I play the four majors? I'm not comfortable going to Saudi Arabia, but you're telling me I have to go in order to be eligible for the majors? I mean, that's like the open tennis shit we were talking about in the 60s.
It's brutal.
It's all about the details. So right now, big bags of money on the table. A lot of people are playing defense. Players, yeah, you go to me and I'm 24 years old and you're telling me I could triple my earnings. I'm listening. I'm listening to that conversation.
Yeah.
But we will see how it plays out.
Yeah, I like you say the devil's in the details, and I'm sitting here going, as you're saying, kind of the listen, tennis forever has been. I always say I feel so lucky to have been caught up in its vacuum, whether it's morally, whether it's the way people are charitable. The Mount Rushmore of tennis has done more outside of the game than they've done inside the game, which is something I've really taken a lot of pride in being a part of. But as you're saying, devil's in the details, and homosexuality is illegal, but we have openly gay players. Kasatkina came out last year. Now, if she goes there and play, are we just telling her to take a week off of her sexuality? I mean, how do we protect our own players who are, their life choices are viewed as criminal when they enter this place? Is like, how do we protect those mechanisms? And can whatever is said now be trusted when it's actually in practice?
So what if we said, you know what, we're really thrilled, we're flattered by your interest, we think this could be a win-win. Here's what we need to see before we move our tour there. We have openly gay players. It's, not only awkward, it's really problematic and disturbing that homosexuality has not been decriminalized. So it's like any business with KPI, right? Here are the thresholds we need to see. Hit these and we're good to go. So I think tennis has more leverage here than maybe it gives itself credit for. And maybe the WTA needs to say, listen, before we can commit, we need to see X, Y, Z. And if the Saudis say, go fuck yourselves, like, we'll go find another sport, then so be it. But we're coming off a not dissimilar situation in China. That didn't go so well for the women's tour. Little strange to take a stance on China and then move your subsequent event to Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a lot going on here, but I do think that, again, devil's in the details. Can tennis say to the Saudis, love to have a partnership, a lot of potential. Candidly, we could use your cash infusion, but we need to see a certain number of conditions met before we sign on the dotted line here.
Now that sounds too rational. But listen, I fear that what's going to happen is, okay, those conditions, what are those conditions worth in this conversation? And like you said, money is oftentimes undefeated. What I don't want to see, is, let's say the WTA finals goes there, right? And we're basically willing to make concessions. And, for the last however many years, the branding is, women, equality, power, the dynamic nature of our women. We make as much as the men, and all of these kind of great things to be passionate about. Like, you can't just take a play off. Right? You got to stop that shit. If you choose to make this trade-off, I don't want to see the warm and fuzzies as one of the pillars of your marketing after that. Like, you kind of can't do that anymore. Is that unfair?
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone else. I said, look, I don't understand how Ronaldo, Phil Mickelson, or even Rafa, like, everyone else can take the money, but suddenly we're drawing the line at the women. They're the ones that have to take the moral stance.
That's so, yes.
But
That's
the flip side of that is exactly what you say, that when your tour is essentially marketed around equality and social justice and Billie Jean King and feminism, it does put you in a little bit of a different situation from the UFC and Tyson Fury and Ronaldo. It would be nice if everybody were on the same page here and everybody said, we don't like that men and women aren't treated equally. We don't like that, again, there's no penal code, which to me is something that, never mind that homosexuality is criminalized. The fact that, like, you can be arrested and you're not told what for And this whole idea that sort of no country is perfect is kind of the response you get, right? I mean, it's this moral relativism and glass
That's
houses and
that's that's such a that's such a
exactly. It's
waste
a
of
weak
a
argument,
that's such a lazy explanation
right?
for anything.
Exactly,
Like that's like this that's like a version of that's the way it's always been done. Like we
exactly,
should have never stopped, going to Blockbuster. Like I don't
exactly.
understand what that doesn't make any sense. Like
Hey, nobody's
obviously we're all
perfect.
imperfect. Yeah, but
Exactly,
you can't
exactly.
compare like a
Right.
10-year-old stealing a pack of trading cards to what's going on over there. Like that's not the
Yeah,
same.
that's right.
Those aren't the same. But it is interesting. Like you brought up. I mean, it's not as if the Saudis are going after characters in our sport that don't have the general level of respect. On one side, you have Martina and Chrissy that are staunchly against it, and you have Billie Jean taking the stance of maybe we can affect change, right? Billie Jean, can you imagine the Billie Jean King Cup in Saudi Arabia? Right, like
Yeah.
that's a weird couple to me, but it seems like that's at least in the rumor mill. And listen, I'm not plugged in like you are. I'm not around the tour every day and having those conversations in the hallways. That to me seems like a mismatch.
Yeah, I mean, again, the money's the big player here, but I think reasonable people can reach different conclusions. And the one thing I think we all need to acknowledge is that in Saudi Arabia, things are going in the. I mean, I saw the women without head coverings, and there was I saw a non-binary DJ, and I saw women boxing. Unthinkable 5 or 10 years. Women weren't allowed to
That's a
drive
fair
5 years
point.
ago. So I do think we ought to acknowledge that things are going in the right direction. Having said all that, there's a long way to go. This isn't me talking. I mean, any objective human rights organization, I mean, just play around on Google and you can see as far as human rights go, we got a ways to go here. So it's a developing story. In a way, it's fascinating. It brings up a lot of what's good and what's defective with tennis, and we'll see how it all plays out, I guess.
Yeah, I will say, like, we do need to give some context so we don't just have our heads in the sand. Like the WTA finals, since they took that stance against China, has been a dumpster fire, right? They put it on last minute in Dallas a couple years ago. They're doing a disservice to the product that these women are putting out by being unorganized. Maybe not unorganized is an unfair term, but being reactionary and waiting till the last minute. I mean, they put an outdoor event in Cabo at the end of the year, kind of cobbled together. It looked like there were 2,500 people in the stands. So it's not the people leaving the PGA Tour, which was thriving, doing well, building. It's not as if you're leaving a great product for potentially good product, but with more money. That's not the situation with the WTA. The finals has been underrepresented on a global scale the last couple of years. It's gone about as badly as it could go as far as putting together an organized, cohesive event that is a celebration of the kind of best of the year. And listen, I do think it needs to be said that I can certainly have my opinions on if I would go do it. I don't have any consequences. There's nothing really there. Do I need an extra X amount of money? That's probably not going to change my life, right? But if 5 years from now, Rafa and Billie Jean King all of a sudden pull this off and things do change, everyone who's against it has to eat crow a little bit, right? Like we do need to have an open mind towards a result that is different than what we suspect or anticipate, right? If it does happen, and I can't think of two more reputable, credible, talented spokespeople for the game. So maybe they're seeing something that the rest of Earth isn't, and maybe they can affect it. But like I'm afraid that we won't know that until it's too late. And it's hard to say that. Like I hope their eyes are wide open.
All right, well, let's thought exercise this. What about the reverse, right? I mean, it was 5 years ago, a Washington Post journalist was killed by the Saudis with bone saws. You say, oh, we go to China, and suddenly, we have the Peng Shuai situation, and we have Uyghurs being massacred, and I don't, Saudi Arabia. Go Google Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Yeah, if things go great, and this is seen as bridge building, and this is a South African boycott that leads to the breakup of apartheid, great. I also think we need to hold open the possibility things could really go south. And if you've lent your support and cash the check and things don't go in a positive direction, that's a risk as well.
I also like I can't stand here and kind of grandstand without owning my own shit, right? Like that's not where I want to live. I've played in a million places. I'm probably taken appearance fees in a million places. I was largely, 26. I don't know that I knew the depths of anything politically or, socioeconomically or geopolitically that was going on. Frankly, it just wasn't in my orbit. So this is, the 41-year-old version of me looking backwards. I probably was dumb enough to think people just dress differently. And that's fine. That's never been an issue for me. Difference never been an issue. So listen, I'm sure I'm rightfully going to get called out on a lot of my opinions, but I also think that if we're not learning and changing all the time, then we're stuck in the mud and we're kind of idiotic. So, I want to own my part of it. There are a lot of nuances to this conversation. But I think it's safe to say that we can all agree that these rumors aren't going anywhere. It feels like there's a head of steam. There feels like there's a sense of inevitability to this happening. So I guess I'll ask you, from where you sit, if it is inevitable, and someone's going to take it, why wouldn't it be tennis?
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean that's a great point, and that's I'm sure a point that's being impressed on a number of these players. Look, the money's hanging here, and if you guys don't want it, it's going to go to someone else. So
It's tough.
it's a tough one, right? And careers are short. Different play. I mean, you can decline an offer, like you say. You can decline an offer. You're 41 years old. It's not going to change your life.
Yep.
If you're a 22-year-old athlete and Craig Tiley is suddenly saying you're going to be able to double or triple whatever you made last year, 2x, 3x, I think we all need to kind of, it's very easy to be binary here, right? I mean, it's very easy to say everyone's doing it, nothing to see here, stop moralizing. And conversely, it's very easy to say this is an authoritarian country that publicly beheads people, no one should go there. It's a nuanced, I think there's a lot to be discussed here, and it doesn't really lend itself to hot takes in 140 characters.
I think the common ground that everyone should be able to find is that if there is a leverage point and we're holding this super tour, it seems like it might be a possibility. Like you're saying, let's call our shot and let's have our progress points in writing at the beginning, right? So that all of a sudden, while we do have the leverage, we can actually go and at least try to affect change, not after the fact, but in real time. I think kind of trusting someone who has maybe this history. I think you would need to cross T's and dot I's and do those hard negotiations while you still have the leverage of these events. And also, one more question I want to ask: like, it's really easy to say, just kind of get the slams together. They function. Yeah. They're all there in their own silos. It's not as if they have like an association where they come together and make decisions all at once. Like, we're making something crazy and something that has never even been really thought of, and it almost dies upon the ideation phase because they each operate in their own silo. The All England Club is going to operate differently than Craig Tiley in Australia, different from the US Open, different from in Paris. Now, is it realistic that, these are all going to get lumped together? And if 3 out of the 4 say yes to the deal, is it still a deal?
We are all creatures of incentive. No, it's a great question. I mean, you're right. These are 4 entities that don't tend to act in coordination unless when it's convenient. Well, you know what? It's really convenient here. And I think the big fear, honestly, is the Saudis say, like they did with golf, and say, you know what, the hell with it. Carlos Alcaraz, $250 million. Coco, $200 million. And just start essentially buying off players and having a standalone rival tour. I think that's the great fear here. So, yeah, I don't think Wimbledon is necessarily doing this because it's a show of altruism. I think everybody is doing some risk analysis here, and if it's holding my nose and joining the Super Tour versus risking that the Saudis are just going to buy off the 10 best players and I'm going to lose my equity, then yeah, it's all very complicated. It's a lot of strange bedfellows. It's a lot of strange alignments, but I think you look at what happened with golf, and I think that's what tennis wants to avoid.
The golf thing is weird though, because and we'll move on to how I got myself in trouble on Twitter this week after this. But
what'd you do?
The golf thing, I responded and I said some stuff in defense of Andy Murray and yada, yada, yada. We'll get into that. But the golf thing's different though, because like I would be getting like an offer as an active player if it was the live model. Like we're taking a bunch of guys who like don't even qualify for Grand Slams anymore, and we can slot them into the live tour. Like if I had to go out and play an actual pro right now, it would be the most tragic TV viewing that had ever existed. So I don't know that you can slot it in because the careers are so much shorter. The variance is so much more obvious to the eye, right? Someone shooting 2 over and someone shooting 4 under can kind of play in the same sandbox on TV. Me playing Yannick Sinner right now, it isn't even like, it's not a product that you can even purchase, even if you have the marketing budget, which is essentially what this is for Saudi Arabia, an unlimited marketing budget for your country. Even that can't play on TV. It's so bad. Like, so I do think there are some differences. I don't think it's a direct comparison with live, mainly for the slams, what's available, and also just the product on TV. We have to run. We have to be in shape. Like there's a limited number of people that can actually do this. You're not pooling from 600 golfers around the world to fill a couple of tours. You're pooling from a much smaller amount. So I don't know that it's a direct comp. Is your tennis game stuck in the Stone Age? Are you still relying on intuition and luck? It's time to enter the future with Swing Vision, the AI app that analyzes your game better than your worst critic, but way more supportive. I love this product so much I invested in it and use it myself. Say goodbye to hours of match footage and hello to highlight reels that capture your brilliance and maybe a few bloopers. Founded by tech wizards from Tesla and Apple, Swing Vision is like having a personal AI coach whispering golden nuggets of wisdom without the hourly rate. Get your free swing stick and trial at swing.vision/r/serve. Take your tennis game from good to great with Swing Vision. Did you see the Murray thing this week where the journalist basically was just talking out loud? And I want your take on this because maybe I'm overly sensitive to it or something. But the gist of it is like, the thing that really pissed me off is like, okay, is it time for Andy Murray to retire? Okay, I think it's a little bit of a tacky question in the first place, but also is what he's doing now tarnishing his legacy, right? As if what he does in Montpellier takes away Wimbledon titles, US Open titles, and it's amazing how it's like, oh gosh, all we want is for this drought from the 20s to end. And then 6 years later, it's like, oh wait, but not if you lose in the first round of Montpellier. I mean, am I overreacting to this?
It's I feel like two things you never do are question athletes' injuries and tell them when to retire. No, this whole notion of tarnishing legacy.
That's so stupid.
It's so stupid. And I also think like, I mean, it's so lazy. It's not,
thank you.
You know, but I also, I mean, I always point to Venus Williams and say, listen, she hasn't won a major in 15 years. You know what? She still finds fulfillment. She's not taking money off anyone's table. She still finds whatever it is, she still finds a satisfaction. Like, is anybody saying, oh, Venus Williams, her legacy's tarnished because she hasn't won a major in more than a decade? There's one, I think it's such a tough decision for athletes too, right? I mean, you've devoted your life to this. I'm curious how you even went about this decision. I don't know if you got this same nonsense and these sort of, you get these questions at press conferences, and there's one skill you have. The minute you retire, you may never be as good at anything else in your life.
Yep.
If Andy Murray still finds fulfillment and still has a reason to get like, why would you ever not want him to keep doing, like, lick the bottom of the glass, dude? Like, I don't get it.
Well, but by that, like Venus, I support all your arguments that you made about Venus. Like, I love Venus. There's no downside to having a Williams sister in your draw. And especially if she's playing, like, I remember she was playing in like Birmingham, England last year in the lead up to Wimbledon. And who did she beat? She had a good win. She won a couple matches. And, I got on TC Live and I was just pumped because I had watched the drama. She beat Camilla Giorgi, and then she played well against Ostapenko. And she kind of had like this flashback week, and people are like, well, she took a spot from, someone. I'm like, well, she also might have sold tickets that, bump up the economy in that community. Like, how far do you want to take this argument? Like, she might have added to the pockets of thousands of people while taking away an opportunity of someone who didn't actually qualify on merit. Like, what? That's an entitlement. Like, that's not that you're not taking it away from anyone who didn't have it to begin with, right? Like, you're basically giving someone an entitlement that adds more value than giving someone an entitlement or a wild card that doesn't add as much value. Like I don't, maybe I'm oversimplifying
No,
this thing, but
that's a really good point. That's excellent.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
I mean, whatever. As long as she took someone's roster spot, it's not like there's a salary cap and she's eating up
no,
the. What do we care? Venus Williams wants to play till she's 60. God bless.
if she
I don't get it.
if she gets a wild card, just so everyone listening, so again, I'm gonna your little Twitter fingers, right? Like just so everyone listening, if someone gets a wild card, they are not taking the spot until all of the rules of tennis changed from the last 50 years. She is not taking a spot from anyone who is qualified with their ranking, which those qualifications, I'm not sure what it is on the women's. On the men's side, it used to be 6 weeks in advance. So that is locked in. You are entered from your ranking that is 6 weeks in advance of the wild cards that are sometimes given 4 days before the event starts. Like they're not the same. And thank God I have more than however many words I can argue with on Twitter to actually make this point. But even Murray, it's even more because he's earned the points to qualify. He's not taking these wild cards. He's getting in on his own merit. He is a top 50 player right now on one leg. So I feel like it's adding to the mystique of Andy Murray. Like I'm sitting here going, did I ever love the game as much as he loves it, going out there on one leg, delivering a product that would be subpar to what he knows is his best? He's seen the best in the world. He is eyes wide open. He's one of the most intelligent people that we have in our game. And you're telling him like he can't participate in a job that he's earned, not by virtue of someone giving him the job, by the fact that he is one of the best 50 players in the world and he can enter any tournament he wants where the cutoff is above 50 in the world. Why am I wrong?
Well, and isn't that now part of an awesome part of his leg? You can tarnish a legacy, right? Like Rudy Giuliani tarnishes his legacy, right? I mean,
Oh
the
my
whole
God.
thing, you can tarnish a legacy, but I don't know how in sports, like, isn't part of Venus's legacy now that, hey, she's still playing into her 40s. How awesome is that? Andy Murray won his majors, and now north of age 35, he's still going out there week after week. Isn't that? No one's saying, oh, he did win 3 majors, but we're going to knock it down to 2 because he's now ranked
It's so
outside the top.
stupid. Like
it's so stupid. Yeah.
You can't take away accomplishment because someone has lost matches in a 250 event in a place where no one's watching except the people that live in that city. Like
So
give me a break.
So what do you think is it? What do you think this is? Because I thought about this. Like, why? This isn't unique to Andy Murray, right? This comes up a lot of times. It's time to go. Roger got it plenty. Why do fans do this? Like, what do you suppose is the motivation here?
I don't know. I think it's like they just need to retire. I think you don't think about it and you don't relay it. Like I had a moment in a press conference where I got chippy about Roger. And the last thing I want to do in a press conference is have to defend Roger after he ruined my life for a decade, even though I love the guy. But they were like, well, Roger's down to, it was basically the line of questioning was like 3 or 4 questions in a row of, well, what should Roger do? He's down at 3 in the world. Is it, I go, okay, how many journalists are in here right now? And there was like 10. I go, then 30% of you should leave right now or never write another story. And I go, but we're pulling from a talent pool of like worldwide professionals that have proven they're actually the best at what they do. And so I think people, forget to kind of, if there's a conversation, they forget to turn that mirror on themselves and think about what it would look like in practice in their own lives. Like that's like telling someone they get to 60 years old. Think about like a doctor who wants to work until he's 75 because he loves going in. And he loves doing it. And, maybe he's working shorter hours. I know orthopedic surgeons who work 2 days a week who are still great at what they do, but they're not going 6 days a week. Like, would you go into that office and say, you know what, you're 60 years old, maybe you were better when you're 40. You're done. I've decided you actually can't do it anymore.
I don't get it. I don't think we do this. Even never mind doctors. I don't think nobody said Joni Mitchell, get off the stage. Your best days are behind you. Like I don't. It's always baffled me. I think it's an easy, cheap column talking point.
I think that's it.
Segment, but I just the whole mentality. I mean, don't we want people we admire? Don't we want people with exquisite skills to do it as long as they want to do it? Like I've never understood. Even never mind the like it's it's mean spirited. I've never even understood the mentality.
Well,
Anyway,
also like if we're in the business, and I always use a Murat Safin as an example, right? Like, in there used to be a minimum number of tournaments you had to play. You know, if I could have gotten away with playing 10 events a year instead of the mandatory, you know, whatever it used to be, 20 some odd tournaments, I go, is there any benefit to not having someone like a Safin, even at 80 in the world? Like, he's creating all of those popcorn matchups, first and second, every single time a Grand Slam draw comes out. You know, imagine if at Wimbledon, Murray Djokovic first round, the place falls to pieces. Like, who's losing because of that? There's no one. Let him be. Like, the average version of himself is better for the first 3 rounds of any tournament. Like, there's no downside.
So should Andy have responded and dignified it and gotten people like you involved? Should he have turned it into a thing?
Sure, why not? Like, listen, I don't think he needs to like go searching for it, but you know, if it's hitting well, I actually think he's going to get asked about it anyways the next time if there's a big story. So why not have it in your own narrative and not be reactionary? Why not like I have no issue with him doing it. I don't think he's justifying it or giving it credibility. I think he's actually probably doing the opposite. And it's not as if he's texting any of us and saying, hey, listen, need your help on Twitter. Like, that's not the way he operates. Right. I'm fine with him defending himself. Like, listen, Twitter's changed the game. A lot of it is bad. You know, one of the things that I would have liked as an athlete is being able to respond without being asked a question. You know, I'm not going to begrudge anyone that opportunity, but like, listen, I kind of went off on a tangent, but like, simply, if someone's qualifying for their the tournaments that they're entering, like, and losing matches that they wouldn't have lost before, or they don't look as good as they once were, like, Andy Murray knows that. He knows that. He knows what he is versus what he was. It's not as if he's got his head in the sand on any of this. But like, to think that like 10 years from now, people are going to be like, that Montpellier match where he lost to Benoit Paire, who hasn't been winning much, man. I don't know. I think differently about the time he broke our streak and won Wimbledon.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a fucking break. That's so dumb. Okay, that's the last. I'm not going to be mad. Well, I can't promise that. I do have another segment where I might be mad, but tell me about this week's 60 Minutes episode. So for those of you who don't know, Jon Wertheim, this isn't what he does all the time. He doesn't just exist on podcasts sometimes. But talk about the 60 Minutes episode that aired this week. The gambling aspect is kind of interesting, and I think it's worth a bit of a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you jump in anytime. You know this as well as I do. This is one of the great shifts in sports of the last 5-10 years. Gambling used to be absolute third rail, right? Tony Romo couldn't hold a fantasy draft. The Super Bowl wouldn't take an ad from the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce because it was gambling adjacent. We've obviously gone in a completely different direction now. Sports gambling is fueling the engine. It's everywhere. It's legal in 38 states and counting. You can devote entire shows to sports gambling. So I have no issue. You know, I mean, it is what it is as part of the landscape. The point of the piece was sort of, how is this being marketed and how are these sports gamblers being advertised to? And that's kind of where we focus. And I think that, you know, this is like, no one's denying that. Yeah, we all like alcohol. No one's saying we should go back to prohibition, but you also don't put up a beer tap outside an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. You don't have an open bar.
It's literally what I have written down on my very professional notes here is like the gambling beer. It's like, at what point do we step in and save people from themselves as adults, right? Like, am I gonna, you know, are we not advertising as, you know, we're not going to advertise beer anymore because in the wrong hands with the wrong person, it has catastrophic. It can be a catastrophic result. How far do you want to take it? Should we take it to processed foods? Also, like, how far do we want to take this conversation with basically trying to moderate what's good or bad for an adult, and what part of that falls under entertainment, right?
Yeah. We got to do something. So yeah, we can debate what's appropriate marketing and where we draw the line and where free will kicks in. But right now it's the Wild West. And these are data companies. They know so much, the same way Instagram and Facebook, and, you know, you Google weight loss and suddenly you start getting notifications, and on your Twitter feed, you suddenly start getting weight loss products. It's the same thing here. These gambling companies know who your favorite teams are. They know when your payday is. They know what time of the day you make your most impetuous bets, what kind of parlays you like, and they can tell who's clearly an addicted gambler, who's making multiple withdrawals every day, and there's very little to sort of stop their marketing. So it's kind of like this is like we do with tobacco and sure processed food to some extent with alcohol. No one's saying sports gambling should be illegal and outlawed and turn back the clock, but we clearly need some regulations on how this is being marketed because it's very engineered. There's an AI component. It's very manipulative right now. They know so much more about you than you know about yourself, and right now they're the spiking problem gamblers. And at some point, we're going to look back on this and say, "Can you believe they used to have cigarettes in the vending machines of high schools?" I think we're going to say the same thing about sports gambling. Can you believe that kids under 21 were getting push notifications on their payday because the sports book had that data and were able to exploit it? So that's kind of the story. No one's saying ban sports gambling. It's here. It's part of the landscape. It's just a question of regulating.
Are we putting cancer warnings on the packs of cigarettes? Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, there's made the point in the piece that there's all this high tech data and these it's like AI, and then the way you get help is the warning. The cancer warning is the call this 1-800 number for help. So they've got all sorts of AI to get you on, to get you in. They've got, if you want to get out, you got to call 1-800 number. To get you in, they've got all this AI. It's sort of like we've moved so far beyond free drinks at the casino and no clocks. This is now there's a whole different level of manipulation. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a healthy discussion to be had about free will and where we draw these lines. But right now, it's also these 1-800 numbers. They're also like we bartenders cut you off when you're slobbering and can't stand up straight drunk. We don't put the onus on the drinker to say I'm going to call this 1-800 number and tell the bartender to stop serving me.
What's the delta between these practices in other silos, right? Like the marketing and the targeted, like, could you make the argument that this is done everywhere else and it's just that betting is it's going from the Wild West to mainstream, so therefore we need to pay attention to it? Or is it so over the top specifically for this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the difference too is like this is addictive behavior. B, like money's changing hands, and this is like ruining families.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like Instagram knows plenty about me and you, and Twitter's got plenty of information. The difference is, seeing this feed in my silo is not causing me to take a payday advance or cash out my student loan.
So we need to pay attention to it because the consequences are so much bigger than eating, exactly. A fun pack of Skittles or something.
Yeah, or watching a stupid video. Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Now this, to tie it back to tennis, and this could be a weird question, but I'm just going to ask it. Now, tennis is one of the easiest sports to gamble on, right? People who do it as a hobby, like, is there a lane where you could make the argument that with kind of gambling becoming mainstream, that is it an avenue to grow the sport to new fans, or do they not actually care about the sport? And does that matter if tennis is at least in the trickle down effect of that waterfall?
Man, this is like the morality edition. We'll go back to forehands and backhands, and
it's certainly easier.
How about that, Ostapenko? No, it's a great question because in some ways tennis is a great gambling sport, right? They play it all over the world. You can bet on everything and not just wins and losses. You can bet on, is the next serve going to go in the net? I mean, you've got a ton of inventory. It's all over the world. We're not only talking about pro events. I mean, in the 60-minute story, the guy pulled up and it was the qualifier for the Charlottesville Challenger. I mean, there were two guys. I don't think they were ranked in the top 1,000, and you could bet not just on who would win the match.
That's insane.
Well, you could bet on who would dump the next forehand. So yeah, I mean, in some ways, tennis is really well positioned for gambling. There's a lot of inventory. It's all different time zones. It's men, it's women. It's a lot of things to bet at in the course of the match, right? I mean, it's point by point. There's also a lot of chance for corruption, and I'm not sure this is where tennis wants to do its growth, but yeah, it's something to reckon with because honestly, like the ITF, the ATP, they all have data deals. Anytime you hear data deal, that basically just means we're selling our information to a bookmaker who's now setting lines. There's a lot of money to be made here. My issue with tennis is that you have this corruption. And again, we're all creatures of incentives, right? So if you're playing and you can win $800 for winning the tournament, and some guy says, "Here's 10 grand. You don't even have to lose the match. I just need you to like double fault the second serve of the third game." Yeah, I mean, if absent morality, it's easy to see how this is very corruptible. And so people say, "Oh, tennis has all these, it's match fixing." I don't know if you read, there was a great Washington Post story I would encourage everyone to go check out on match fixing. We're not talking about, we're not talking about the Wimbledon semifinals here. We're
No,
talking
that
about
doesn't happen.
it's the top. Yeah, it doesn't, right? I mean, and I feel like tennis
No.
needs to message this much better. Look, there might be corruption, but these are guys who are part-time players at the Tashkent public high school, playing, for $40. It's not. It's like saying there's steroids rampant in baseball, and you say, "Well, is it the Yankees? No. Is it the Dodgers? No." Well, where are the steroids? Oh, it's the league in Curacao. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the corruption in tennis, not exclusively, but predominantly, is happening at these sub levels, these subcutaneous levels that people don't even know about. But it does tarnish the whole sport because the headline is match fixing scandal in tennis. No one, casual readers don't realize we're about as far removed from Wimbledon as,
Yeah, totally.
Anyway.
And just to kind of put a button on this, like, again, holding the mirror to yourself, I have friends who were 70, 80 in the world playing tour events in Moscow, where if you lose first round, and keep in mind, like, tennis players pay for their own travel, all their own expenses. You don't get on the team jet. You don't have your laundry folded when you get there. Not to say woe is me, just to say it's a different operating thing than you would associate with most sports, where, individuals making an individual decision, yada, yada, yada. If you're not top 100, you're not getting into majors, you probably have a hard time paying off your expenses while trying to be a professional tennis player. All that said, I know people personally who, and I never got one of these calls. So to prove your point, it's not the players that were the top players or making a run at Wimbledon. I never got approached in my entire life or my entire career, but I have buddies who would play in Moscow and get a call from an anonymous source offering, 20x of what the first round prize money would be. They said no, but that's like that's all of a sudden the reality of what they're doing. And by the way, they're getting that offer on a match where maybe they would win 35% of the time anyways. Like, it's just, I'm happy to do it. I'd be disappointed in everyone if they did it, but I'm just saying, like, to your point, now take it from an actual tour event and go down to what you're saying, the Tashkent future, and you are absolutely ripe for corruption in the sport. But it is here to stay. I mean, the network we both work for at Tennis Channel sponsor, I have a personal deal with Betway where I don't make predictions, but I give basically analysis like I would give on our show, and people can take or do what they want with it. I like to think I can rationalize, you call them incentives, by saying, well, hopefully I'll make someone a little bit smarter when they're going about it. It's not the matches that are kind of in the underbelly. We're dealing, kind of on the up and up with matches I'm pretty sure aren't going to, be too affected by me saying Alcaraz needs to hit his backhand cross court. But, it is what it is. It is here to stay. If anyone gets a chance, where can they go back and watch that segment after the fact, Jon?
It should be on Paramount Plus. I don't know. Play with the Google machine. Should be on YouTube. This is the media world
Good.
we live in.
And you can find that, you can find that lovely segment that we just talked about that Jon Wertheim put so eloquently. Try to mess up eloquently when you're saying that's kind of ironic, isn't it? But you can find it on the Google machine. So just do that. Now, speaking of gambling, we didn't want to let this go without diving into another. Producer Mike, do we have some of these? We have some prop bets for the Super Bowl here, Jon Wertheim, and it's of our someone who's been in the news this week, the lovely Taylor Allison Swift. Some prop bets, which is actually another thing that I want to talk about. I couldn't be more impressed, not just because I'm a fan of her music and I respect what she's done as far as being a pop star, but like to do this tour and then to make a secret album, announce it after winning Album of the Year in Grammys, and to be a government psyop all at the same time? Who has time for this? I did pickleball commentary last night in Miami. I came in, got off the plane, and have to talk to you for an hour, and I'm exhausted. Who has time to be a part of the government underbelly and a psyop and be the biggest pop star on earth all at the same time while maintaining a new relationship? Jon, this is nuts.
Let me ask you this. How are we going to go? This was story of the week, right? And we all had a good time with it. How do we look back on this? I mean, here is this absolute superstar of superstars. You're right. I mean, I think as prolific as it is, but it's not at the expense of quality. There's so much to admire here.
Oh my gosh.
But now she finds herself in the culture wars inevitably. Dating the Pfizer boyfriend. I mean, it's just serious question. 10 years from now, when we say, you have this uber star dating someone in the Super Bowl, and this somehow gets caught up in the thresher, in the machine of culture wars, how do we process this? How are we going to tell our kids about this?
I hope we view it through the lens of there was this massive movement that was griftable, and every person who could grift off of it chose to do it, no matter how insane the concept of it was. Like, all of a sudden, we're against a capitalist who finds 18 different ways to sell you something, and you're kind of you thank someone for the pleasure. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed pop star who started off in country, dating a star football player that plays for a Midwestern team. Yes, and now all of a sudden they're part of some agenda for. I mean, I'm like, I can't. The mental gymnastics is exhausting, right? And at some point, can we just celebrate success? Whether it's for the player that's going to go down as the best tight end in history, whether it's for Taylor Swift, who's going to go down, and I don't say this hyperbolically, as the biggest pop star that we've ever had. And so they make googly eyes and they kiss each other after a game. Like, who fucking cares?
Right.
Besides everybody, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure this joke's been made too, but the obvious thing to do is go root for the team from San Francisco. Oh, wait.
Let's prove our point really. Exactly. Yes.
Anyway.
It's unbelievable. Okay, but let's have some fun before we leave here. What will happen first, Jon Wertheim? Either a team scores a touchdown at -120 or a Taylor Swift live shot. What happens first?
Oh, man. I think the networks have been chasing certainly my beloved CBS. There's so much backlash to the Taylor Swift cutaways. But yeah, that's a good question. I might have to go touchdown on that one.
Oh, I'll take the opposite side of that. I'll take five from you for that, because every lead up this is Super Bowl, this is the show, this is ratings, this is Twitter, this is like they want to set everyone off. Like, this is just, they want it to be wildfire. We definitely get a shot of her, and rightfully so. Before the first touchdown. We're also assuming that the first touchdown is going to happen within 3 minutes. Like, the first touchdown could happen with 3 minutes to go. It won't, but it could happen with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter. There's no chance we don't see her, I don't think, before the first touchdown. This is actually really important, this next one that I'm going to ask you about. This is hard-hitting stuff. To go from 60 minutes to something this deep is going to be, I hate to take you deeper, but lipstick color -1500. It's basically red or the field. What do we like here? It's got to be red.
It's got to be Kansas City Chiefs red, right?
I think so. Okay, moving on. That's an agreement.
Whatever. If her boyfriend played for the Vikings, I might have it's got to be red.
Like a purple.
Yeah, exactly.
Purple might be a little too hocus pocus, maybe. But anyways, number. Did I get you on that one, producer Mike? Yeah, good. I like that. Sorry, Joy and one person in the room that actually gets the hocus pocus reference. I appreciate it. Number of times Taylor Swift has shown over under 5.5.
Oh man, God, kind of depends on the game, right? I mean, if this is a dog shit, if it's a blowout, I'm thinking over. But I do think there's some. I think these networks are very sensitive to the excessive. I think NBC's the one that got dinged. I'll say over, but not by much.
I'm going one gratuitous shot early. Obviously, after every Kelsey touchdown or catch, I think this is a great line. I'm going to go under, but I think they're going to get their money's worth early. Will she wear Kelsey's jersey during the game? No, -200. Yes, +150.
Are we talking? But go back to the other ones. Are we talking about just the broadcast, or are we talking about like starting at noon Eastern?
No, I think
all the
when the
cutaways
actual
and all the. Okay, so we're talking kickoff.
No, I think once we get into like the pregame, the anthem, the flyovers, all that, I think that's all in play.
Yeah, but that's where you do it, right? I mean, I'll cut away from her during the anthem, but not. All right. We're overthinking this. We're overthinking.
Wait. Before we get canceled really quickly, don't talk about cutting away from the anthem to show Taylor Swift. That would just send we might actually all get taken out.
Yeah, that's psyops.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we got here? Is she wearing the jersey?
Super Bowl 58 MVP. Is this the last one? Yeah. Okay, this is it. Then we're going to let you go. And Wertheim's looking at me like I cannot wait to get off of this segment because this is the worst one that's ever been. But we're going to go with it. Super Bowl 58 MVP to mention Taylor Swift. No, they're not going to mention Taylor Swift. No.
Even if, I mean, there's one tight end is MVP. There's a shot. Otherwise, no, right?
No, he'll do like the little heart thing that he did after the thing, but that's not a mention. No, that's not also, a literal mention.
If there is another team playing, and if they win, there's zero chance, right?
I think I agree. No, listen, but what I am happy about, Jon, is that we finally got to the important stuff this week. And I'm not talking about gambling in sports. I'm not talking about the Saudis taking over. Exactly. We're talking about lipstick color. Okay. Jon, my friend, thank you for coming on again with us. Thank you for being our guest. Are we any closer to recruiting you to a full-time position where this becomes a habit?
There. We're getting there. Good. More Taylor Swift. No.
Is there anything we can do? I put a shirtless picture of James behind me today just to, I don't know if that affects things with our negotiation of having you come on full-time.
I need you to wear red lipstick in my jersey next time.
You got it. Done. Jon Wertheim, thanks for your time, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much again. You're our early adopters. I'm having a blast doing this. I hope you're having fun listening. Please give us feedback. Respond on socials. Tell us what you want for the next episodes. I do think it is important to acknowledge our winners every week. Last week it was more tennis focused with X's and O's and breakdowns coming out of the Australian Open. This week, more of a macro look at some of the issues that could and will affect tennis. But props to Jelena Ostapenko winning her second 500 level event of the year, not even past the first week of February. Pretty impressive. Bublik winning in Montpellier. This guy is he's fun to watch. You never really have to wonder what he's thinking. Kamikaze, kind of confusing conquer method. So good win there. And thank you all for listening. Again, this has been a blast. Have a happy Super Bowl week. Enjoy with your family. Cheer for whoever. Bet on the national anthem if you want to. I say I'm taking the over. Reba sang it like 124, but that was like 20 years ago. So I think it's just gotten a little bit slower. Everything's a little bit longer. I'm Andy Roddick. Thank you for listening to Served.